It's 9:40 a.m. on the 15th of November 2025. In the Western Pacific, east of Luzon, the USS Ronald Reagan picks up two fast-moving unknown tracks slicing in from the northwest. Alarms snap to life. Sailors sprint to their stations as the carrier's escorts, USS Milius, USS Shiloh, and USS Lake Erie tighten their formation. On the horizon, sudden flashes appear. Plan J-16 fighters are already pushing in, their weapons lighting up the sky. The sound on the deck shifts from routine to combat in seconds. Air crews rush to launch Super Hornets while radar screens fill with new symbols. Something big is coming, and it's coming fast. In moments, the strike group must decide whether this day becomes just another tense encounter or a fight that could change the balance of the entire region. Deep down, everyone knows this is more than a drill. One wrong move here could pull in allies, shake confidence across Asia, and rattle trade routes far beyond the horizon. In the Western Pacific, just east of Luzon, the sea looks calm, but the stakes sitting on its surface couldn't be higher. These waters carry the cargo, fuel, and raw materials that keep daily life running back in the United States. Every container ship that crosses this stretch of ocean reflects jobs, prices, and stability at home. That's why the USS Ronald Reagan and its escorts operate here, to keep these lanes open and to show that America won't back away when pressure rises. But today, that pressure is different. The plan is testing how far it can go, sending fighters and missiles close enough to force the US to react. If the Reagan fails to hold this line, it's not just one ship at risk, it's the credibility of the entire security network across Asia. Allies like Japan and the Philippines are watching every move, measuring how the US responds and whether it can still guarantee safety in the region. For them, every track on radar is a signal. Stand firm, or start planning for a world where the sea feels less safe and more contested. Trade insurance spikes, shipping companies reroute, and markets feel the tremor long before the first missile ever hits. For the sailors on deck, the mission is simple but heavy. Protect the carrier, protect the sea, and stop any attempt to push the US out of these waters. A carrier is more than a warship, it's a floating piece of national will, packed with thousands of lives and the aircraft that project power far from home. And now, with tensions climbing by the minute, the conflict between the two sides is turning into something viewers can feel. If you're already sensing which side is holding the line stronger, tap 1 or 9 to let us know. Your reaction helps shape the next chapter of this story. 9:42 a.m. The first warning hits the speakers. Multiple inbound threats confirmed. The E-2D Hawkeye locks onto the two fast contacts from earlier, now joined by more signatures rising behind them. What began as a simple approach is quickly turning into a coordinated push. On the Reagan's deck, Super Hornets roar forward, launching into open sky to build a forward shield around the carrier. Every second now has weight. Aboard USS Milius, the commander issues the first weapons order, SM-2 up. The missiles leap into the air, climbing fast to meet the incoming fighters and break their initial attack rhythm. Long-range shots matter because they shape the fight early, thinning threats before they get close enough to complicate the defense. Moments later, USS Shiloh and USS Lake Erie fire their own missiles, creating a layered arc that overlaps across altitude and distance. Bright flashes bloom across the horizon as intercepts detonate, but the radar operators see what the crew can't yet: a second wave forming behind the first. J-16, sea-skimming missiles, and smaller signatures weaving erratically, too agile, too low to classify at first glance. The escorts transition immediately to medium-range intercepts. ESSMs launch in tight pairs, sweeping lower flight paths to catch anything slipping under the high-altitude fight. Electronic noise fills the battle space as the EA-18G Growler begins full-power jamming. Its job is simple: distort enemy targeting and buy reaction time. Every few seconds, the operator calls out new angles of interference, adjusting the beam to disrupt incoming missiles before they can lock onto the ships. One short truth guides the team: confusion keeps the carrier alive. The Reagan shifts a few degrees, just enough to optimize gun arcs and reduce its exposure without breaking formation. On deck, crew members move with practice speed, securing gear, repairing recovery lanes, and working through the roar of engines and alarms. The strike group's goal is unchanged: hold distance, keep the skies manageable, and force the fight to stay outside the range where mistakes turn deadly. As the debris of the first intercepts splashes into the water and the next wave speeds toward them, tension across the fleet sharpens. The opening shots have been fired. The battle is no longer a possibility, it's fully underway. The second wave closes fast. What the radar showed earlier now becomes brutally clear. Several of the smaller signatures aren't missiles at all. They're autonomous sea-skimming drones, weaving low across the surface and slipping between radar sweeps. They're harder to lock, harder to track, and they force the escorts to react at a pace that strains every system. USS Lake Erie shifts to rapid ESSM launches, firing in tight timings meant to fill the gaps between intercept windows. Each missile arcs low, cutting through spray as it hunts the incoming drones. Some hits land clean, sending bursts of water rising like small geysers. Others slip past, hugging the surface so tightly that even a few degrees of wave height can hide them. USS Milius tightens its turn, closing distance with the Reagan to compress the defensive screen. Overlapping envelopes mean more guns, more sensors, and fewer blind spots, exactly what the group needs now that the fight is drifting into dangerous, close-range territory. The ship vibrates as its systems cycle faster, switching from long-range calculations to rapid reaction modes, designed for threats that appear and vanish in seconds. On the Reagan, the tension deepens. Flight deck crews brace for shockwaves from near intercepts, while the CIC tracks the drones cutting in at unpredictable angles. The soundscape shifts less of the sharp missile launches and more of the constant electronic chatter as the Growler ramps up its jamming, trying to break the drone's guidance links. One operator mutters what everyone feels: if they get any closer, guns will have to finish this. The destroyer's captains coordinate in short, clipped calls. Small course changes, adjusted firing lanes, a calculated tightening of formation. Every move shrinks reaction time but strengthens the shield around the carrier. It's a gamble built on precision. Compress the line or watch the drones punch through. And in the stress of that moment, as drones skim through the last miles, the clash between the two sides becomes its own story. Raw, fast, and uncertain. If you're already feeling which side is pushing harder in this phase, press 1 or 9 to drop your take while the battle keeps building. Just as the escorts begin thinning the second wave, a new alert snaps across the radio net. The Hawkeye's operator identifies it first. A swarm. Not missiles or standard drones, but a cluster of micro sea skimmers pushing in from the far edge of the radar screen. They ride inches above the surface, slipping under radar lobes and weaving unpredictably as operators zoom in to keep them visible. The shift is immediate. The swarm is too small and scattered for long-range missiles, and too numerous for medium-range interceptors to stop cleanly. USS Shiloh moves into close defense protocols, bringing rapid-fire systems online for a potential point-blank engagement. Inside the Reagan CIC, callouts tighten as signatures multiply. The Growler boosts its jamming output, but the small targets react in chaotic bursts, splitting, merging, and darting away. The pattern looks less like incoming weapons and more like a shifting cloud, challenging every sensor to keep a stable lock. The escorts adjust their angles to funnel the swarm into narrower lanes. Hulls hum as tracking systems accelerate. Gunners brace at their positions, eyes fixed on the point where the swarm will cross into the ship's final defensive ring. Each course change narrows their margin for error but strengthens the protective wall around the carrier. Across the surface, thin wakes streak toward the formation, sunlight flashing off tiny metallic bodies. The twist has fully arrived, an unexpected tactic built to overwhelm sensors and force the strike group into reflex-level defense. As the swarm closes the last miles, the controlled battle shifts into something far more volatile, and everyone aboard feels the moment tightening toward a decisive clash. The swarm breaks through the last stretch of open water in a chaotic wave. As the first cluster crosses into the inner defensive ring, USS Milius fires instantly. Its close-in systems roar to life, filling the air with a stream of bright tracers that carve glowing lines over the sea. The first drones erupt into sprays of metal, but more pour in behind them, bouncing through the gaps like shrapnel riding the wind. USS Shiloh follows a heartbeat later, unleashing its rapid-fire mounts. The guns chatter so fast, the hull trembles. Sensors struggle to separate debris from live targets, as shredded fragments scatter across the surface. Every hit buys seconds, but the swarm is so dense that even with perfect aim, too many shapes still push forward. Reagan's own CIWS finally joins the fight. The turret swivels with violent precision, spitting a river of tungsten that rips across the waterline. Sparks flash like welding arcs as drone after drone collapses into pieces. The crew feels each burst through the deck, the physical reminder that this is the last barrier between the ship and a direct hit. One drone darts past a burst of gunfire, skimming so low it vanishes between waves. It reappears only a few hundred yards out, heading straight for the carrier's bow. The forward mounts shift, barely catching it in time. A final burst slams into the drone, shredding it just before it reaches strike distance. The explosion throws a column of spray high against the hull, rattling the forward compartments. Across the formation, the escorts keep firing, their guns stitching the sea with overlapping arcs. The last clusters of the swarm break apart under the barrage, some detonating, others tumbling into the water. The noise doesn't stop at once, it tapers slowly. The guns cooling, alarms silencing, the deck crews lifting their heads to check for fresh threats. Smoke drifts over the water, mixed with steam rising from where hot metal met cold sea. For a few long seconds, no one speaks. The strike group holds formation, battered, strained, but intact. Then the CIC confirms what everyone hopes. The swarm is gone. The last threat has been neutralized. The Reagan's deck is still secure. The horizon, for the first time in minutes, sits quiet. The fight ends, but the silence that follows carries its own weight. The Reagan's deck teams move carefully across the surface, checking for damage. Spray marks streak the bow where the last drone exploded, and a faint shock ripple still hums through the metal. It's minor scarring, not wounding, but a reminder of how close the strike group came to taking a hit. No casualties, no fires, no systems lost. Still, everyone understands the margin was thin. Across the formation, the escorts report in. All vessels remain fully operational, though several gun mounts show heat scoring and spent casings blanket the decks. The CIC crews replay sensor feeds, studying the patterns of the swarm and the timing of each interception. The lesson is clear even before the reports finish. The battle may have been won, but the threat environment has changed. Mixed waves of missiles and autonomous drones are no longer theory, they're here, real, and evolving. Higher up the chain, allies react quickly. Japanese radar stations elevate alert levels, tracking the aftermath with sharpened attention. The Philippines reinforces its maritime patrol posture. Insurance firms begin recalculating risk models almost immediately, nudging shipping costs in the Luzon Strait upward. Even outside the battlefield, the ripple is felt. For the US, the message is equally sharp. The defense worked layers, coordination, and fast decisions kept a carrier safe under pressure. But the swarm revealed a gap, a place where reaction times compress and technology strains. The next encounter might bring a larger wave, or a more complex one, and planners know they don't have long before the next test. On the deck of the Reagan, as the sun lowers and the sea steadies, the crew resets for the next patrol cycle. The sky feels open again, but no one mistakes that feeling for safety, only for a pause. The clash that unfolded today is already shaping tomorrow's plans, doctrines, and drills. And as viewers, if you felt one side walked away with a clearer advantage from this showdown, press 1 or 9 to mark your take while the story moves toward its next chapter.